They wanted this family, this pedigree line, to have a champion cow. Maybe this is hard to follow. They said that this really good-looking cow is actually from this family, and it wasn't. We made up an excuse that we were there just checking tattoo numbers, and we noticed that all the tattoos were done in the last week. So then we called the RCMP.
This is the Personal Finance Show.
Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is episode 63 of the Personal Finance Show, and the last episode of 2018. I've published one episode every week since January of this year, and it's been such a great experience. I learned so much from every guest, which is what I hope for you when you're listening. I'm going to take the next few weeks off from publishing episodes and prepare all of the episodes for the first 3 months of 2019. If you haven't heard, my wife Kayla is pregnant with our first child, a baby boy, and he's coming sometime in January. So I'll be busy at work over the next little while assembling future podcasts so that I can spend the first few months of 2019 learning how to be a parent. And I couldn't be happier that my final guest of 2018 is my cousin, Cal MacWilliam. Cal MacWilliam helps developing countries get money when they need it most. Cal is a senior economist at the World Bank, a global organization that helps to reduce poverty and build shared prosperity in developing countries. Cal will meet with the government officials of these countries who have already reached out to the World Bank for loans or grants and provide them with the funding they need. Okay, it's not that easy. The government officials might need to make a few changes before they qualify for the loans or grants. These are usually changes that will improve their country in some way. Positive changes. Sounds like it should be an easy decision, right? Implement policy change that's meant to improve the lives of your citizens, and you get money from the World Bank. Money you asked for. Money that you said you really need. And if it's a grant, you don't even have to pay that back. But often Cal will visit these countries after speaking with their government officials and find they haven't made the changes necessary to qualify for the money. Despite these frustrations, Cal continues to dedicate his career to helping others, as he has since he started at the Canadian International Development Agency, or CIDA, in the 1980s. Cal now lives near Washington, D.C., and I was very happy that he agreed to sit with me when I was visiting earlier this year to talk about his personal finance story.
My first money memory, I'm not a person that was like driven by money.
No,
and
okay.
Still not driven by money. So
Yeah.
my first money memories are not very vivid or
Like I needed money to go buy that candy or
No, exactly.
Okay.
But I can remember my first kind of like memorable money moment.
Like where money started to mean something to you?
No, kind of where just money was here's what happened. So I can remember when I was maybe 14 or 15.
Okay.
And my dad ran these businesses up in Grand Bend, this cottage resort area.
Okay.
On Lake Huron. Yeah, on the coast of Lake Huron.
So what kind of business?
So he was always the entrepreneur. So he
Okay.
he always never worked for anybody except for I think the first year or two of his career after he went to Ryerson in electronic engineering or something.
Really? Okay.
Not engineering, like electronic.
Like building electronics?
Repairing at the time. Yeah. Repairing televisions and radios and radar systems. So he was working on radar systems up in the north. That was his first job. But then he came back and he opened a TV sales and repair shop. Him and a buddy.
Nice.
I think he was his best man at the time. Opened this business. And then he just went from one business to another. So
like opening more business or changing businesses?
Changing businesses.
Okay, yeah.
He went from there to running a marina. Okay. That was located at the Windsor Yacht Club because he was always into boats and we always had boats as a kid. So he bought the local marina and he ran that for a few years. And then he opened arenas in the Windsor, Essex County area.
And that's where you're living in this whole time.
Yeah.
And so would you say he was a serial entrepreneur?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And he just saw an opportunity where there was a shortage of rinks.
Sure.
Most of the rinks in Canada are public.
Yep.
They're owned by the communities.
Okay, yeah.
And he said, it takes a long time to get public funds and for a community to build a rink. And so he just started building rinks in the Windsor area. And there's a big demand from Detroit, too, because they didn't have very many rinks at all.
They would just
hockey was booming over there. And so half his ice time was rented. And then one of his things was ice rinks in the winter. And then he had this resort in Grand Bend in the summer. There was a restaurant there, an ice cream shop, a beach stand where they were, selling, hot dogs and hamburgers and drinks and whatnot on the beach.
You were working there?
And yeah, so I would always work there. But I can remember this goes back to my first money memory. And it was, he left me up there for a week.
Okay, like to
by myself at like 14 years old. No, because the house we lived in needed to be painted. So he said, you stay here for a week and you scrape the entire exterior of the house.
Oh, great. The whole week.
The whole week, all by myself. And he was paying me like X amount of dollars. I think it worked out to like $3 an hour or something. Like back then in the 70s.
Is it summertime?
Yeah.
Like, so you're off
school.
This
was early summer.
And he said, you go and you spend this whole week.
Yeah.
And I'll pay you a certain amount.
Exactly.
Which, like, you weren't thinking about the value of money.
Oh, no, because I didn't have a need for money.
Yeah.
I was, whatever I needed for money, I could basically get from my father or whatever. There was no restrictions.
So, like, it doesn't sound like he was, like, extremely well off, but he was making money with these businesses.
He would be considered
rolling them into the next business?
upper middle class.
Okay, upper middle class.
Yeah.
Like, these were all successful businesses that he ran. Like, he would run it and make a lot of money and then move on to the next one.
Yeah.
It's not like he would.
And he would make money selling them because he had probably brought it up to a certain.
So he was able to build the businesses up because there are serial entrepreneurs that do not do that. The business fails and then they move on to the next thing and they start over, right?
Right.
And so he was.
None of his businesses ever failed.
Okay, and
he never lost money at anything. I don't think.
Wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
And he just kind of. Do you think he just bootstrapped this whole concept? Like, did he learn how to do this?
Oh yeah.
Like,
he didn't go to business school
in the family blood or something.
Not in his side of the family, because my grandfather on my paternal side, his father worked in the auto industry.
Yeah, okay.
In Windsor.
Sure.
He was like a plant manager. Basically
blue collar, but
exactly. But moved up to management as over his career
level.
Yeah,
but he would have probably worked 40 years at Ford or Chrysler's, and then retired.
And then
but your dad didn't follow in his footsteps.
No.
He wanted to. Yeah, did you guys ever talk about this?
Not really.
Like, why?
Like, what drove him?
Yeah, why would he do? Seeing his dad have a probably comfortable life, moving up in management, why he decided maybe there's no the capitalism there. There's no room to grow. Because he really made the most of his ability to have no cap, right? Like, there's no cap on your dad's income.
No. When you're in your own business, entrepreneur,
he just kept making it bigger and bigger. Meanwhile, he could have been working just as hard in a regular job, and it would have grown much.
Who knows
slower.
how your life develops, right?
Yeah,
I think a lot of
true.
it is just chance and opportunity at the time, and a decision here and a decision there, and it ends up.
But he probably liked the freedom of having these businesses. So your first experience is
so then he left me up there for this week.
Yeah, scraping
and I was supposed to scrape the whole house. I can remember they were putting these like blocks in at the beach.
Okay.
Where the parking lot is.
Oh, okay.
And they were looking for local labor.
Like to lay down
all these blocks.
Yes,
just grunt work.
Yeah, okay.
And they were paying $5 an hour.
You know how to scrape houses.
Yeah, so they were there, and this was like 2 blocks away, and
you did it at the same time, or this is after you were done scraping?
It's the same week.
Same week.
And so I said, screw the house. I'm going to make an extra $2 an hour.
Screw what your dad's going to say?
I didn't even think about that.
No, really? Okay.
And that's why it was my most memorable first money experience, because it was the wrong thing to do.
You weren't driven by money, but
I wasn't driven by money.
But you were this time.
But I think it was more because I didn't really want to scrape.
Yeah.
And this was a little bit easier, even though it was grunt work.
And more value.
And more higher pay.
Okay.
But my dad was pissed. And I thought,
you didn't think of the negative value.
No, exactly. And so this is why it sticks in my mind, because it was the wrong decision. And you shouldn't be driven by the extra $2 an hour. Like, you made a commitment.
Yeah.
And if that would have been, let's say, not my father, another employer, that would have been...
You would have been fired.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or your reputation would have been sullied as the local laborer.
And so I think the lesson learned, and that's probably why it's memorable, is you commit to something, stick with it,
Stick to
get
your
the job done,
contracts, yeah.
and move on to the next thing after.
If you realize, or this time you didn't have a choice this time, like you made your choice, but really you didn't. Your dad said do this, right?
Yeah.
And there were consequences. And sometimes we do make those. You agree to a job or a contract, and it's really not what you thought it was going to be, or
right, or you don't like it.
Yeah.
But it's only a week.
Yeah.
Just tough it out. Do it.
And without ruining your reputation.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly. So he probably didn't give me another responsible job for a while until I was maybe 16 and a little more maturity.
So because of the businesses and your dad was doing pretty well, then you probably didn't have to work for anybody else in high school? No. And
not at all. So at the rinks,
he
had hockey schools eventually after he sold the thing in Grand Bend, and he left that. He had hockey schools, and I was a hockey player, so I would act as a counselor there, taking care of the kids, tying their skates, collecting pucks, doing all the grunt kind of work
working for your dad, but you wouldn't get paid for this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so he would pay you.
Yeah, and that was another thing that shows kind of how I really didn't care for the money.
Yeah.
I've never been driven by money, because I can remember his accountant, kind of his manager, saying, we're out $900 or something.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? And I can remember my dad then coming to me and saying, are you cashing your checks? Or are they just piling up in your drawer?
He's like, I need to reconcile.
Yeah. And I'd go back and say, oh, yeah, I've got about, I don't know, $900 here.
You just thought they were like certificates to frame.
Because again, I did need money. If I needed $20, I'd ask him for $20 if I needed it.
That's an interesting thing, right? Because in a way, your dad's teaching you, like, you're working, you're doing a job, and you're getting paid.
Getting paid, yeah.
But you're also not having to buy anything with this money or do anything with it, so you're not learning how to do that.
No, I wasn't learning how to budget or how to...
Any of that. I mean, we might be skipping ahead, but when do you remember first having to do that?
University.
Yeah, okay. So you went
So
on
I remember
your
at
own.
university, so what would happen is I'd work over the summer with my dad at these various things, and it was sometimes more than just hockey school. There were times when I would run the midnight shift at the rink, or
whenever
something.
you're needed.
Yeah, whatever is needed. And so what would happen is I would try to make that money that I made over the summer last for as long as I could into the school year.
Okay.
At university.
In university.
And then, of course, it never lasted long enough. You can't really make enough money over the summer to get you through the whole year, kind of. And so I would try to make it as long as I could. And I can remember being fairly frugal, but not starving student frugal, just so that I didn't have to ask him for money, until at least maybe into the second semester.
Well, what was his policy on school? Like, who pays?
No, he paid.
So he paid.
No, it was a total.
School. He paid for the school, but this was your living expenses that you're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
food, entertainment, beer money,
why?
Stuff like that.
It's an interesting thought, right? Like, he seemed to be okay providing the money when you needed it, but why do you think it was hard for you to ask, or why do you think you didn't want to ask? Like, right
I
off
think
the bat?
because compared to my sister, who was also at school, he was, I think, harder on her money wise.
Interesting.
Because he perceived her as more of a free spender.
I see.
So it's like he kind of knew I was
not
frugal, but not
you have
wasting
built-in
money.
Frugality.
Not wasting money.
Exactly.
I wasn't spending money on things I didn't need.
That's right.
And so there was kind of a little bit of a challenge.
Okay.
To see how far I could get and make him think that I'm doing my part and not really spending too much.
I mean that.
But I always knew I could just go to him.
Yeah, you're very practical. I guess practicality as opposed to frugality. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're.
No, I wasn't cheap.
No, you're very practical.
Yeah, and I wasn't getting other guys to buy my beer or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
So at this point, like, what did you decide to start in university? Like, what kind of degree did you want?
Agriculture.
And
so my original motivation was to be a vet.
Okay.
To be a veterinarian.
Yeah.
And so that was my
you
original.
Guys had horses.
So at that time, we were on a farm.
Yeah. Okay.
With horses, race horses, and I said, "Well, I'm interested. I love the racing industry. I love the horses. I'll be a vet."
Well, let's talk about the race horses. So when did your dad start breeding, or was he breeding racehorses?
My grandfather. My grandfather on my mom's side had racehorses.
So this is all. And
he was quite wealthy, so he had
Yeah, can you
racehorses. My two uncles, my mother's two brothers,
so
they had racehorses. It was kind of in the family. And
can
then
you explain what does it mean to have racehorses, and like how do they generate money? Can you just give a brief for people who don't know?
Well, I would not say they generate money.
No, okay.
I mean, they
good
do if
point.
you get lucky.
Sure, okay.
But you don't go into the racing business thinking you're going to make money at this.
Interesting.
With very few exceptions.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people like the trainers,
yeah,
or the farm managers, or people that work for somebody in the racing industry.
Okay.
But as an owner
Yeah.
and a breeder of racehorses, you need a pretty good plan to make it.
Okay, so
to have an expectation of profit.
So they already
industry.
had money then.
Exactly.
It's people who already have money who can buy racehorses.
The racing industry is 80% people who are wealthy from previous occupations
so how far,
enterprises, and then there's a 20% that struggle.
So how far back can we drill down? Where did the original wealth come from?
My grandfather on my mother's side.
And is there a specific like industry or like thing?
He was in trucking industry.
Trucking, and did he build like a company?
Yeah. He had maybe the biggest trucking company in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so
and then both my uncles, my
Yeah.
mother's brothers, got into that.
So did this wealth trickle down to your dad?
No.
No, not at all.
He got zero.
Interesting. How does that work?
Because when my grandfather died, my mother and her two brothers were the beneficiaries of his estate.
Okay.
And they were already in the business.
Okay.
And my mother wasn't.
Yes.
So she said,
so this is your mom's.
The brothers
dad.
will get the business.
Yeah.
And she just stayed out of it.
Okay.
And
so
turned the business over to them.
You wonder, like, if there's a chain of wealth, does it end, right?
No, it kind of ended
and
there.
It kind of ended there for your mom. But your uncles, so your mom's brothers, they got more of a, I guess,
they got the business.
Would you say, I don't want to say free ride. Do you feel like they got an easier life?
Better end of the stick.
Better end of the stick.
Yeah.
But your mom, who we haven't talked about.
No, but there was no need for the money. My dad was doing fine. No, she never worked. She worked as a very young woman, pre-kids kind of.
And of course, we're talking about a different generation as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was the norm.
That was definitely the norm at this time.
Yeah.
So no money coming down, but and we got into this because of racehorses. You were hanging out with your uncles, who had the racehorses.
Oh, I followed their racehorse stuff,
and
then my dad got into it, hanging out with my mother. They were at the racetrack all the time.
Okay.
With my grandfather.
Yeah. Okay. So he knew about this business, and now back to the fact that it doesn't really make you money. What's the draw?
Passion.
It's a passion. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a passion.
For me, it's a passion. I think for wealthy people, there's different drivers.
Okay.
Like one is just, for some, it's a passion for them too. They want a Kentucky Derby winner. They want the profile. They want the status.
Yeah.
And then for others, and I know, I have lots of friends in the industry.
Sure.
Many who are quite wealthy.
Yeah.
And they are in it because of the networking. Because there's other wealthy people in there, and they network and they make connections, and there's all of that. But I really think you have to love the industry, and you have to love racing. And
interesting, yeah.
Raising horses, it's challenging and it's exciting.
And you wanted to. This is what you wanted to do. Maybe become a vet and then go back.
So that's what was my original
horses.
motivation, was to be a vet so that I could be in that industry.
Because it's what you knew, is what you liked.
Yeah, exactly.
And Guelph is probably one of the best places for agriculture.
That's the only vet school.
University of Guelph, only vet school in Ontario. Okay, I didn't realize.
And being in agriculture is kind of your traditional way into vet. You take animal science.
Okay, so you did that?
Yeah, but I did not continue with the vet.
Okay, so you got a bachelor's degree?
I got a bachelor's in agriculture.
Yeah, just like it's a general agriculture degree.
Animal science.
Animal science.
And then I did a master's in agricultural economics. I did apply after my second year to vet school.
I see.
And most people don't get in after your second year.
I see.
But I said, I'll give it a shot. If I get in after my second year, great.
And you didn't.
And I didn't, which is normal. Not many do.
Yeah. Were you disappointed?
That I didn't get in?
Yeah.
At the time, probably after that second year, I was probably disappointed. But after that, and once I graduated, like at my bachelor's degree, I had lost the motivation to be a vet. I didn't really want it anymore.
Because you said you're not driven by money, and so like this, being a vet is, I don't know if there's a lot of money in it.
No, in the
Not
vet
really, right?
industry, I thought there was.
Yeah, or just
But
decent.
the more I was exposed to it, and for a couple of summers there, I did hang around the local vet for a while, like for a couple of weeks, just to see what it was like.
Yeah.
And it kind of just struck me as, nah.
Okay, so
like if I'm going to stay involved in the horses, I'll be an owner. I'll own the odd little racehorse or something.
But agricultural economics, which to me means farming, was there an end goal then for, you said masters?
No, I did not have a grand plan.
No, okay,
at all, ever.
Yeah,
it was kind of like
so this is none of this was like you guys weren't in finance or anything. You weren't talking about economics a lot. Your dad probably had a line on certain trends here and there to be able to have successful businesses.
Yeah, but no, he was businessman,
scale.
not an economist.
It's micro, small business, which is I guess his would be small to medium size business.
Yeah, small.
This is microeconomics, and so you're studying agricultural economics like. Was it on a global scale or a national scale that you would
both,
be? Yeah,
or even smaller. I mean,
and so like I feel like the almanac comes in here somehow, like being able to predict certain trends.
Some of that
kind of stuff.
There were some stuff like that,
and yeah, because agriculture versus just general economics.
This was stuff like modeling price trends.
Yeah. So you, in hindsight, actually, if somebody was telling you they were going to that now, where would they end up typically at a job like teaching? Economics?
Sure. If you get a PhD or something, you could be teaching economics. You, as I did, ended up in development.
Okay.
Because agriculture is a big driver
around
in developing countries. I mean, most developing countries are dependent on their agricultural sector.
So you
government.
So government is where you.
That's where I started.
Okay, so you get your master's. Are you working at all during this time? Do you need to be making any money during this?
No. I'd go back
in the summers.
Yeah, in the summers, go back home.
There is some privilege here in the story, right? And I want to, because a lot of people they need Ontario assistance, OSAP.
No, that's probably the first time I would have recognized that I'm fortunate here.
Yeah,
is at school because I had no concerns about money at school.
But maybe some of your friends.
Oh, exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
because I could see it around me.
Yeah,
but it didn't affect me.
And it's like, if you have money, some people are driven by money because they have money or because they don't have money. Either way, and you weren't. Do you remember ever having a scarcity moment? Was there anything? No, so
never. And I can even remember another kind of money moment that sticks out. Is
please.
After my fourth year.
Yeah,
my dad said, if you want to go back, if you still want to go to vet school, and it's going to take another 4 years, don't worry about it.
Oh, he said that to you. Yeah,
you're covered. And he said, if you've met some woman, I had a girlfriend at the time, if you met some woman, you want to get married, don't worry about it. We'll cover the costs. We'll get you through this. No,
or the wedding, you can do all that.
Yeah. You can still go to school.
That is, that's so nice.
But I didn't want to.
But and do you remember how that made you feel? Like,
oh yeah,
just like I'm free.
Yeah, I'm free to make the decisions I want to make without having to worry about baggage around money.
That's right.
Finance and
and it's such a it feels like such a rare thing these days.
I guess it depends, what your background you're coming from and the demographic cohort that you're hanging around with. Is if most of your friends are privileged like you, then you don't see it.
A lot of your friends were not, right? At university anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so...
No, and a lot of my friends in high school were not.
Yeah. Did you feel like... Because I did just listen to a great podcast episode where they talked to someone who's a trust fund kid, and she was a teacher, but she had to hide all of her privilege because people are like, is teaching a hobby for you?
Oh, yeah. No, I know.
Is that something that you ever ran into? Would people be like...
I never noticed that.
Like the silver spoon thing?
No. I mean, I know my friends considered our family amongst my high school friends to kind of be the best, most well-off of my kind of group. But there was nothing in your face about it or resentment.
Okay, so if you were driving around in like super fancy cars and
flying
in private jets, that would have been a little extra. That you were just able.
I never got a car until I graduated.
Okay,
it was like my graduation present, and it was like a $6,000 Plymouth Horizon or Omni or something, whatever they were.
Let's see. What I like about this is that you had an advantage, but you didn't take advantage, right? That's like
true.
That's the biggest difference, because like you hear about people who become lazy.
Oh, they abuse it.
They abuse
basically.
it. Yeah. And so,
or they become gaudy and flashy and
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
it's just,
So you have this degree in economics now, and or master's in agricultural economics. You didn't have to worry about anything. Well, you don't even really have any of your own money though right now.
no, I don't have any money.
So you don't have
Nothing.
You don't have. So that's another interesting.
I started
thing
to
too.
worry after I got graduated.
It's
in
like
my
I'm thinking you don't actually have any money,
no,
but you like he'll take care of this or that. But if you were like I didn't
have to worry about it.
You didn't have to worry about it. But if you wanted to, I want to go on a trip or I want to do something that, I mean, your dad seems pretty easygoing.
Oh yeah,
but maybe he had a line somewhere but it's not. Maybe he never did have a line for you. But you would never.
But
ask
I never
to cross
pushed
it. You never pushed the line. Yeah,
I never pushed it. So I don't know where his line was.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Because
my sister might have a better idea.
Yeah, she might have pushed the line,
Yeah.
right? And he sounds like he maybe put his foot down at a time or two.
Yeah.
And
my other brother,
okay, yeah,
my one brother, he never pushed that line either because he was totally independent.
Okay,
Like
so
he was like my dad.
He didn't want
kind
to
of
rely.
an entrepreneur, a
You weren't
go-getter.
reliant on him.
Yeah.
But you realize, well, first of all, you don't have any money, so you can only make so much at that age and go to school. Like, but also you would have made your own money if you had to, if your dad would have been so generous.
Although I remember worrying when I graduated, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Now I got to get like a real job.
Well, what if
on my own?
Yeah, and you. So how did that work? Were they still coming to universities to recruit at this time? I remember that was more of a thing where you could go to a job.
No,
fair
they
and
were.
kinda get
They had
job.
a job fair for like graduating class.
So
you could go and interview and stuff.
Yeah. Is that where you got your first job?
No, because I was fixated on this horse thing.
Yes,
and that was kind of still
still
and
there,
that's
but
part of the
not
reason
that,
I went into agricultural economics.
Yes, to continue
is part of the economics of the horse racing industry, and I wanted to work on that, and that's what I did my like thesis or master's. It's not a dissertation, but thesis.
So you're still there. I didn't realize.
Yeah. So I was interested in horses, and I was looking at the taxation issues in horse racing too, and stuff like that. So then when I graduated. And again, this is probably due to privilege.
Yep.
I had a straight line to the Minister of Agriculture.
Amazing.
And I just went into his office and started talking to him because he knew my dad. He knew our
so
farm. He knew exactly where I lived.
But it's not we're acknowledging privilege, but we're also defending hard work at the same time. Because what happens is we don't have the conversation about privilege because we feel sometimes like it diminishes our hard work. So I want to acknowledge both.
No.
So you did this. You did your master's. It wasn't like
exactly.
Handed it to you.
And I actually applied independently for a position at Windsor Raceway.
Okay.
Which was a pretty big racetrack.
Sure.
Outside of Toronto, it was the biggest one because it drew from Detroit.
Okay.
So it had a big population base. And I also then went to see the Minister of Agriculture, and I sat down in his office and talked to him and convinced him that Agriculture Canada has almost minimal relations with the horse industry.
Really?
That it's big industry, employs X number of people. Yeah. It generates so many revenue because at the time, about 7% of all the bets placed at every racetrack went to the government as a tax.
Okay.
So it's pretty lucrative for the government.
I guess so.
And I said, and you do nothing for the industry. Like you have all these programs in dairy and pork and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And the horse industry employs just as many people, maybe more. And it creates more green space than maybe these other farms. And yet it's ignored. So then I convinced him that you need to do more with the horse industry.
Okay.
So I said, okay, we'll give you a job and you figure it out.
You do that.
What we should do.
Okay, so that's where you got started.
Yeah. And then, but that didn't last for very long.
Oh, okay.
So I set up this thing, the Canadian Horse Council, and we had a few meetings about, what does the industry need from the government.
Yeah.
And it didn't get much traction. I mean, there's a lot of demands, and I just moved into the kind of mainstream.
But you're in the government now.
Yeah, mainstream government.
So you use this new idea in a way to get into the government infrastructure. Yeah. And then you moved in. What was your next position?
So after that,
we're going way back, right?
Yeah, way back. It was.
Can you, just for perspective, can we get a date? What's the date now? You're starting.
So I graduated
you're in your 20s?
In 79
So we're in the 80s then.
So now we're in early 80s.
Okay.
Early 80s when I joined the government, 81 or 82 or
Bo
something.
just joined the world.
Yes, that's right. You were just born and I'm just starting out in my career.
So you're in Ottawa.
Yeah.
working for the government because that's where you had. But when you did the horse council thing, did you have to move to Ottawa? Okay, so you had to move to Ottawa.
So I moved to Ottawa.
So that's when you left Windsor, and now you're moving out east.
Yeah.
Anything really different about that versus like living close to the border versus living in Ottawa?
I thought I'd moved to the North Pole,
yeah,
climate-wise.
The cold.
Holy mackerel.
And you're not
Windsor's very...
it is.
Essex County's quite
Well,
temperate.
Most of southern
with the
Ontario
lake effect and everything.
is in the United States, basically, in terms of the parallel. Like,
Well,
all of Canada is straight across except for that.
No, it's like same as Northern California. Or
Yeah,
something,
exactly.
in terms of the latitude.
And it's funny, Ottawa is not even, like, I never consider it to be Northern Ontario.
No, I know. But seriously, like, I thought I'd moved to the North Pole. It was so friggin' cold.
But you can skate on the Rideau.
Oh, yeah, but not in that
and you
weather.
have, what is it, Winterfest?
Weather.
What's it called? Is it called Winterfest?
Winterlude.
Winterlude.
Yeah.
There you go. See, I just a test to see if you're actually from Ottawa. So you're there, and is that where you met Lori?
Yeah. We met in June of 83 and we're married in May of 84.
Yeah. So what's your role at this point? Say when you got married. Let's just go with 84.
So when we got married, I think after this horse thing, I became what's called the chief registration officer.
Okay.
So that's responsible for the actual application of this weird thing called the Animal Pedigree Act.
Okay.
So, your dogs get registered and they get papers.
Sure.
And cows get registered and they get papers, and you keep track of all the lineage.
I didn't know about the cows, but that sounds right.
Every animal.
Every animal in Canada.
Well,
everywhere.
purebred, pedigreed animal is
Okay.
registered with a number and a tattoo and an identification so that they can keep track of their pedigree in order to improve the breed.
Can you define pedigree for the lay people?
It means you know who the father of that animal was, you know who the mother was, you know who all the grandparents.
You can track lineage.
You
of an
track
animal.
Exactly. It's like an ancestry
I didn't
of every
realize
animal
that
in
at
Canada.
all.
Every
there's a
purebred
family
registered
tree for animals.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why this is so crazy.
Way
to
better
me.
organized
Way
than
better
people.
than people. Because of safety reasons?
No, because you want to improve the breed. So you're trying to, like this sire or this father, he produced cows that produced a lot of milk, let's say. And so then you keep track of the mother, and you want to know, does she come from a family with a lot of milk? And you want to keep...
I grew up near farmland most of my life. This is blowing my mind. I don't know why. I didn't know any of this.
Yeah. So there was an act, an act of Parliament, that regulated this.
Okay, and you were there
so I was in charge of this.
Register the new animals or the...
So there were associations for Holsteins and Guernseys and Jerseys and all the different breeds.
Holsteins
of
are the
pigs.
black and white ones.
Yeah, exactly. For all the different breeds of animals.
Yes.
Pigs, horses, cattle, everything. Beef,
mostly
cattle,
farm,
dairy
but
cattle.
also there's racehorses as well?
And racehorses, yeah.
But mostly
horses.
Mostly farm. And
I mean, the big thing was animals, farm animals.
And of course, there are horses for equestrian riding and horses for...
so those are all pedigree.
A lot of people still use
They're all
horses.
registered.
Yeah, okay, so all registered.
80% of the headaches and the problems were with the dogs. Just because people, a farm animal is just a business asset.
Yeah.
Dogs are like
dogs
your
are pets.
kids.
Yeah, dogs are...
So if anything goes wrong with your dog, this is a big issue,
Well, what's an issue? How does an issue come up in your registration situation?
So there was one where this gentleman called and he said, "There's this cow who's being shown in these shows because this is big money."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about that part of it.
Yeah.
Cow shows.
And I mean, it all goes back basically to their milk production, and so they think cows that look better and have better structure and better size and mass and whatnot, they can produce more milk. So the better quality of animal you have, the more milk it produces, your bottom line goes up.
Okay.
Right. So they said this cow's winning all these prizes, and the guy says, "I know it's fake. It's not the real cow that is assigned that pedigree and that number."
Oh, it just looks better or something. And
But they wanted this family, this pedigree line, to have a champion cow.
Okay.
Maybe this is hard to follow.
No,
so they put in they said that this really good-looking cow
this is awesome.
is actually from this family, and it wasn't.
Wow. And so
you can test this through blood test, DNA testing.
Okay,
right?
so you would then have to investigate this?
Yeah. So then we said, okay, we'll look at this up. And so we did a little bit of investigation ourselves and looked like, oh, the guy might be onto something here.
Yeah.
Because we made up an excuse that we were there just checking tattoo numbers, and this is a routine.
Random audit.
Exactly. Yeah. And we noticed that all the tattoos were done in the last week.
Whoa.
Like they should have been done
whenever
over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And they were all recently done. So the guy clearly had not been
wow.
properly tattooing his animals, and so there was room now for mix-ups.
Okay.
Or for playing around.
Yeah, so there's room to now there's evidence
room to manipulate,
to investigate further.
Exactly. So then we called the RCMP.
So the RCMP
Oh yeah,
okay,
the RCMP checks this out.
If there's any non-Canadians listening, this is like calling the FBI.
Yeah. Yeah. Because this is liable to fines and penalties. And,
because now I'm really drilling down on this.
This
too
is
much.
not very finance,
personal
finance.
But it is. This is about the reasons. For this is people's personal finance.
Yeah.
Right? This is their business. This is their livelihood. How much?
For sure.
How much would this cow be worth?
These cows
people?
can be worth $100,000.
Like over the course of their lifetime.
No, if he were to sell an animal.
So
that.
if something was this valuable and produced this, because they're going to try to use it to breed more.
Exactly. And
so it's really worth it to fake this.
Exactly, because what happens in the cattle industry, which you can't do in like the racehorse industry, the thoroughbred racehorse industry, that cow can't just have one baby a year.
Okay.
They can
have
super ovulate and take the embryos out of that cow and
how often? Like
every cycle.
How long is this?
Well,
once
a month.
Like for like a
once
female
a month
cycle. Yeah. Okay.
And they could take
cows are like us.
And they can ovulate.
They're mammals.
They could end up having several eggs ovulate in a single cycle.
I don't know why I'm thinking them as not mammals.
No.
You're the same thing as us. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and then they take those and they put them in surrogate cows, but the surrogate cow is really irrelevant because the genetics all come from the egg.
So your degree in agricultural economics or master's has prepared you for this.
Oh, kind of.
Because this is what we're talking about. This is the money of farming, but also big farming. This is really fascinating. And you do this for how long? How long are you the registration?
For maybe 3 years or something.
3 years.
Yeah.
And then you just keep moving up in the Canadian government?
Yeah. So then and this also is reflective of money not being a driver.
Yeah.
So then Lori,
my
wife, decided, this is boring. Let's do something more interesting.
Like just get out of Ottawa, you mean?
Not out of Ottawa, but she wanted to travel. Lori, she's a huge traveler.
Sure.
She just back from Croatia last week.
So Lori wants to get out.
So she says, why don't you apply for the Foreign Service and become a Foreign Service officer?
This is just something that you could do. Or she was looking into it?
No, she just said, why don't you look into that? It'd be fun career to travel around the world and be a diplomat. And
interesting.
So I did.
It's nice to have buy-in from both of you. Like, if you were just like, I got to go to another country. And but she was the instigator, so that was nice because then you could be working. And she was like, yes, let's do this.
Yeah.
Right?
No, and I had already was on a fairly steep career path at Agriculture Canada. Because then after the chief registration officer, I got another promotion and a higher level job, and all my colleagues at my level were in their 50s.
So how are you?
And I was like in my 20s.
How are you getting these? You just knew your stuff.
Yeah,
did everyone have a master's in economics?
No, and that's the thing. These older guys didn't necessarily have master's.
They were old
degrees.
school,
and at that time, it's not like today.
No,
where to get
everybody
any job
has
you need a
degree.
master's.
So you had a bit of an advantage there.
Sure.
And also being young and you're not driven by money, but you seem to be driven by improving things. What was your drive? What would you say? Like even today, there's a drive for you still doing what you're doing.
Today it's more trying to make a difference in some of these countries I work in.
But you don't feel like that
which
was
is very difficult and is somewhat frustrating. So you're not sure if I would definitely say I'm not sure if I'm making that happen.
But with that drive is what keeps you trying.
Yeah,
to
and
do
you make
it.
these little you can see these little differences that
Sure.
you make, which is about all you can expect. You're
But
not going to
then-
transform the world or transform one of these countries overnight, but you can make steady progress.
I guess you need to keep that perspective in your head
exactly.
too. Otherwise, you would be really
No, and that happens to
disappointed a
people
lot.
in this business. I mean, they just say, I'm banging my head against this wall for the last 30 years. I quit.
Let's jump ahead quickly, just briefly, and we'll come back. Can you tell us exactly what it is you do at the World Bank?
I handle our, what we call our direct budget support loans
Okay.
to these countries. So there's probably three main tasks. So one is I manage these big loans to these countries, and this is money that just goes straight into their budget.
Yeah.
It's not to build a power plant, it's not to build a dam, it's not to build a road or a school,
Okay.
or it's just to support their budget.
They asked the World Bank for money,
Yeah.
and they need it just for general.
They just
stuff.
need it to. They've
It's
got a
not-
hole
they-
in their budget.
They don't have a plan.
You know, they're running a deficit of 3 or 4% of GDP,
yeah,
and they need to plug this hole.
or their country's going to collapse or something. Like something's really going to.
Yeah, or their debt will become unsustainable.
Okay, yeah.
You know, they ask the bank for money, and we say, okay, we'll consider this, but you need to fix this, this, and this in terms of policy reforms.
Sure. So the reason why they're not doing so well is maybe because
No, exactly.
they're not
because
doing so well with
because
human
they
beings.
have bad policies. And
Yes, economic policies, social policy, all about
social, taxation, public financial management.
They're
They don't
just in
spend enough
they're
on
in
education,
shambles.
health. You know, these are
This is this
problematic
their
places.
last, like their final straw is to ask the World Bank for money? Like, is this a last resort for them, or is it just
for the
part of the
countries I
process.
work in,
Yeah.
which tend to be the poorest of the poor.
yeah?
Yeah, we're really the only. I shouldn't say we. Development institutions.
Yeah, the World Bank.
So the bank,
what,
the IMF.
Yeah, okay, International Monetary Fund.
Bilateral donors like Canada might give money, the
And
U.S. might give money.
These organizations are in place for this specific reason.
yeah, exactly.
To give money to people, spread money around the world where it's needed, so that the world economy is sustained. Is that
To reduce poverty.
to reduce poverty? That's the MO.
Yeah.
That's
the
really
IMF has a slightly different one, but the bank it's for poverty reduction
okay.
and equitable economic growth.
Okay, so and you don't have to name the country if it's not
Oh, no, it's fine.
appropriate. But like, so you pick the country, and
So like
yeah.
most of 80% of my time is in Haiti now. We give grants to Haiti.
Yeah, okay.
Because they're so poor that
Yes.
we don't want to
Yeah.
increase their debt load. They would have trouble paying it back. So it's grants.
You actually just give them the money.
We give them the money
But they
in
have to
exchange
meet-
for policy reform. The other thing is that I would provide them with policy dialogue and advice. So
Okay.
they would say,
Helping
listen,
them reform.
we need help in improving our customs administration.
Sure.
There's leakages.
Yeah.
We're not getting the money we should out of custom. There's fraud.
People are bringing
there's
guns and drugs in
contraband.
and all this.
There's
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff.
sure.
You know, we've got leaky customs, and
Okay.
we could get 4% more of GDP
If we plug
in
those
revenues
holes.
if we plug these holes.
And you have best practices from
So
from
then
the,
we
from the
would
US?
we would bring them from where?
From the U.S., like you're able
No,
to
because you can't.
World Bank is it a U.S. Entity?
No.
Okay, World Bank just happens to be located here in D.C.
Because the U.S. is its largest shareholder.
But you are a private company? No.
We're an international financial
Sorry,
institution.
but I mean not governmental.
Is
that
an international financial
interesting?
institution. So the governments of the world,
Oh,
the countries of the
I
world,
see.
own the World Bank.
But no one.
The U.S. has 17%. Canada has like 2.4%.
Okay.
No.
So they all own it. There's no majority shareholder.
No.
Everyone gets a vote on what is done.
Well, everybody votes in proportion to their
Yes.
capital stake in the bank.
So it's like a public corporation.
Yeah, kind of.
But only governments can own the shares.
Right.
Interesting.
And we can only lend to governments.
Okay, before I'd never asked you the question. I thought it was a U.S. entity,
No.
and that they just kind of sent
So
around the world.
the
Okay,
World Bank,
I mean it is called the World Bank.
the World Bank, the IMF,
Yeah.
and the United Nations, they were all created at the same time at the Bretton Woods Conference.
Okay.
Right after World War II. So the World Bank was created to rebuild Europe after the Second World War.
Ah, that's the timing. Okay.
So it was originally, it still is, called the official name is the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
And they just shortened it.
And yeah, it's just the moniker now.
It's easier.
Is the World Bank. But once that kind of chore of rebuilding Europe
Yeah.
was done,
Yeah.
then they said, well, what do we do with this institution and all the money and capital it has.
Yeah.
And then they switched, like in the 60s, late 50s, 60s, to, well, let's do the same thing for developing countries and get them up and running and get them, out of their difficult situations.
So you have best practices from your awesome people that work at the World Bank that know how to
right. So
countries.
the bank has it's about
experts
16,000 employees, and we have experts in everything.
Yeah. Okay.
So like I said, if they needed, let's say Haiti needs help in customs reform, I organize our customs people to come help them.
Yes.
And to help and to provide what we call technical assistance or analytical and advisory services to give them ways out of it, to solve this problem they might have.
So for Haiti, you're giving them grants. What would be frustrating about that? Just because you can't, it's not making a dent?
Well, it's not just Haiti. It's any of the countries we work in. The issue is you need to do this reform, and there's all kinds of political economy issues and constraint. Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily the government resisting.
No.
Anytime you bring in a policy reform, whether it's here, Haiti, Africa, Canada, U.S., there's going to be resistance because it's going to upset the apple cart, and somebody's going to somebody's going to be hurt by this.
Even though they're in shambles and you're giving them money and they're asking for your help, even that, it still is going to take a while for them to put this stuff in place.
Sure. And like as I said, even if the government recognizes, yes, we have to do this.
Yeah.
For example, the people that now benefit from leaky customs,
of course,
at the border,
they're going to resist.
Are going to resist.
Yeah.
And these can be very, very powerful lobbies and very powerful individuals.
And they can't trust that this is a better way. Like
it's not in their self-interest for them to now have to pay duties on their imports.
Of course.
Because they weren't paying them before.
So they're actually not going to get any benefit from you helping the country. The country's going to benefit, maybe, the other people, but not these people who are involved in the illegal activities.
So it can become frustrating because there is always resistance to reform.
Yeah.
And you have to try to figure out what are the political economy constraints. Where's the resistance going to come from? How can you maybe beat back that resistance a little bit? How can you assuage, some of that resistance and get this reform through? And that's challenging.
Okay, I just wanted to jump ahead just to talk about that a little bit because it does kind of tell us that you've done good with your privilege. And the journey started with you joining the Foreign Service.
Exactly.
So
I joined the development stream of the Foreign Service, which is working with developing countries.
Okay.
And delivering Canada's development assistance to
so
these countries.
Canada has a sort of a World Bank fund, as you
Canada
were
has
saying.
CETA. It
used
to be called CETA.
Okay, so you work for CETA. I remember that now,
Agency, which has now been subsumed under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Okay.
So CETA doesn't exist
anymore. So they had a separate organization just for developing countries and helping them. And that at that time meant you would move to that country or whatever country.
There's positions in Ottawa where you're managing things from there, and then there's positions.
Local. I guess you always need a local person
in the field,
right? In the field.
There's people in the field.
So you got a job as a field person.
So we were in Ottawa for a couple of years with CETA, and then we got transferred, moved,
whatever opportunity. It was your
Zimbabwe.
Decision, or did they just say you're going here?
No, that's part of the deal.
Yeah.
As a Foreign Service officer, you're expected to.
You're ready to move around.
Yeah.
Okay. So you knew, and did you know how long this was going to last? You could always just stop working for CETA.
Oh, it was at the time. It was going to be my career.
Okay, so that was it. So you're like, we're going to move around. Lori loves it. She made the decision, basically. You're cool with it.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's happy. You're moving
around.
But
the way this all started was, I was going to say, is not being driven by money.
Yeah.
Because I had this fairly steep career trajectory in Ag Canada, and joining the Foreign Service, I started right at the bottom.
Okay.
Like right at the bottom.
That was the thing. And if you would have been more driven by money.
More than in half.
But at this point, so are we saying what? How many years before you joined? Like, is it 6 years or more?
I joined CETA in 87.
Okay, so
and I think I joined the Canadian government in 81.
Yeah, okay, so 6 years or so.
Yeah.
And now you're making money, And are you able to? Are you an awesome saver too?
Like with Ag Canada?
Yeah, like when you were just working and
no,
and
I
living.
wouldn't say that we were so flush with money that I was saving.
But you're putting it away, or you just
no,
keeping up
but
with your costs?
we had a.
You bought a house?
I had a house
You had a
prior
house?
to getting married.
Okay.
A farm, because I had my horses there.
Oh, in Windsor?
No.
In
Oh,
Ottawa. You bought a property?
I had bought a property, a farm property in Ottawa.
And it was like something you could buy yourself, or you like a mortgage? Or?
Oh, yeah, I had a mortgage. Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
But and this is
small, not
80s.
Not that expensive.
Mortgage rates are high in the 80s, though.
Oh, my first car loan was 21%. 21%.
And did you benefit from the savings rates being high too at some point?
Well, yeah, of course,
though?
That's all relative, right?
Yeah,
your savings rate. But I didn't have savings. I had to borrow money
so you
for
were
a car.
borrowing, and by the time you had savings, was it still high? Like,
well,
do you
there was a
remember?
period there where it was kind of shaky in the sense that inflation was crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm paying 21% on my car, and my mortgage wasn't that bad.
Mortgage rates were still reasonable. What,
reasonable,
like
and
10%?
I think that probably something like that.
Yeah.
But then the Canadian government threw in a wage freeze
Okay.
to try to control inflation.
Oh, and that's you.
So now I'm paying 21%,
and you're not getting an increase,
and I'm not getting any
not cost of living
raises.
Increase even.
Yeah.
To keep up with
Now I was getting raises because I was being promoted.
So
but
you got
my
that,
standards, the base, the salary
so
scale
you have
was
high
not.
it's high interest rates.
Yeah.
So there's really no focus on like building up a retirement fund. Do they have RSPs at this time? Has that been created? I feel like
I've never had an RSP in my life.
oh really? Okay, because we should talk about that.
Right. So we bought a farm, and then being married and whatnot, it was not ideal to be out in the boonies, out in the rural areas. So
you saw that.
Sold the farm and bought an apartment complex.
Okay.
4-unit apartment complex.
Downtown
And
Ottawa?
right downtown in the market.
Yeah.
And we lived in one of those units and rented out the others.
How many units?
4.
4. So you're a multiplex or multi-unit apartment as your first investment.
Exactly. And we lived
Investment
there
property.
and rented it.
So it paid for itself, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah.
Was it easy to say, like, how much down payment would you have needed for this, or did the farm
Okay, well
pay
that
for it?
was.
Did you get that down payment money?
So kind of.
Okay, yeah.
It was.
It's good to talk
I
about.
didn't get it from like my dad or anything,
sure.
But my grandfather, the trucker guy, for each grandkid, he bought whatever it was like 1,000 shares of Hiram Walker's. Because Hiram Walker's is in Windsor,
in Windsor,
right?
Yeah.
And so
right by the train
he just
station.
put it away.
Okay.
And
back
so
in when, like a long time.
Well, like when I was born,
he bought you 1,000. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got this benefit?
24 years later, however old I was.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'll just cash that in and use that as a down payment for this apartment complex.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah.
You use it for good. Again,
well, I guess. Yeah.
To build your future. But it was a gift. You know, people get gifts and they squander their gifts.
Oh, no,
right?
for sure.
So this is important to talk about.
And I knew it was there since I was 16.
Yeah.
And I just left it alone.
Interesting. So you let it grow even more. I guess it was growing? Was
but it was
stock
nothing
growing?
super. It wasn't like some.
Do you remember how much it was? Can you say?
I think by then it was maybe $35,000 or something.
So that's probably a nice down payment for this 4-plex.
Exactly.
And
plus we had sold the farm.
And then plus the farm.
So there was a little bit of equity there
so
that
you
got transferred
you had
over.
probably a smallish mortgage then.
Not smallish.
No, okay, because it was a 4-unit
yeah.
price. Okay, so you had this mortgage, but the
rent's all covered it.
The rent, and now people talk about rental properties as being a job. Did you find it to be a job? Did you find the maintenance to be hard work?
Not the maintenance,
or the
because
tenants?
It was an old heritage home that the guy had completely renovated.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And when he had renovated it, a builder, a developer, when he had renovated it, I shouldn't say a developer, like a builder, independent guy.
Mm-hmm.
Once he had renovated it, he put it on the market, and so we were the first ones to buy it after the renovation. So it was in perfect shape.
So
perfect,
good to go.
Yeah.
But the tenants, were they?
Oh, there were some hassles. You know, there was always issues.
And
we had one tenant I think that was there for like 10 years. She was great.
And
the others though moved quite often.
So you buy this, you live in it for a couple of years, and
then only lived in it for 3 years or 4 years,
and then you moved.
Buggered off to Zimbabwe.
So you keep.
So we gave it to a property manager.
A local
company.
property manager, and also rented your unit out
Yeah,
too?
so then we were renting all
So
4.
you now have this property, still paying the mortgage with the rent, and you hired somebody to take care of it locally, and you take this placement in Harare, Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the standard of living for you then in Zimbabwe when you get there versus
ridiculous
how it is for locals. So
they
bring you over there, and you got this a compound.
Well, we've got a full acre property, totally walled property, secure.
It's got to be really
nice
safe.
Nice gardens, a
because
pool.
It's not safe for you. People.
No, we had guards.
Yeah, so
at
guards.
the gates. And
did it feel weird to be
I never
in that?
lived like that.
No,
before.
no one, no one in Canada.
No, but it didn't feel weird. I mean, everybody else did it that was there. Our cohort did it.
And so what's your work like there? Are you meeting with the Zimbabwean officials?
So actually, we were based in Zimbabwe, but I was responsible for Zambia.
Okay, Zambia. Okay.
And I also had like a townhouse in Zambia. So when I went up there, I stayed in a townhouse there.
Did you buy it?
No. All these are provided by the government.
Okay, so
when you're like this was government
CETA
housing.
stuff.
CETA house.
You're living there. You don't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
You're making money. You're not making money. Well, you might be.
But we have to pay rent. You have to pay rent.
You still have to pay rent. Okay.
Yeah,
so they
because
didn't
the
provide
Canadian
that.
government, they know. Listen, you'd have to be paying rent in Ottawa. You pay rent here.
Okay.
Now, a place like that, an acre property with all these gardens and pools and everything, would have been way more expensive
for sure.
than we had to pay. But they realize a family of.
So they charged
4
you
at the
what
time.
was reasonable.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And the government maybe owned the property?
The government did not own the property
Okay.
we were in, but they do own some properties.
They do own some properties.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was, how long were you in Zimbabwe?
4 years.
And the conditions of Zimbabwe at this time?
Oh, fantastic.
Okay. So they're good.
It's deteriorated seriously since then.
Yeah, but so why were you sent there at that time?
Oh, it was a developing country.
It's still because
it's
considered developing, poor,
Yeah.
and you're.
And
so,
Zambia was even.
Of course, you're
poor.
Zambia. I forget you're dealing with Zambia, but you're living in Zimbabwe because not safe to be in Zambia.
Because Zimbabwe was CETA's what they call decentralized location.
Okay.
So CETA managed all of Southern Africa out of Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Yeah. So it covered Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Namibia, Lesotho, Swaziland, South Africa.
And so you and Lori decide at this time that you want to adopt some kids.
We actually adopted a kid before we went to Zimbabwe.
So you were working for CETA and you put in for adoption. You thought maybe you didn't know where you were going to go yet, but you would take, if you got the adoption gone through, you would take the kid with you wherever you would go.
Yeah.
And was it just before you left, if I remember correctly?
Yeah.
So like what? How soon?
We knew that going through the public adoption system is very difficult.
Sure.
And it takes years.
Okay.
especially if you want a baby.
Yeah, so you start.
It's ridiculous.
Start early.
Years and years. So so we said, listen, we have
another
a very
option.
short window here. So we have to go to a private.
Oh, so
I can't even remember.
How does that work?
What agency we went through? There's private agencies.
You can do that now. Even?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So some like expectant mothers.
Yeah.
Don't want their children going through the public system.
Okay.
So they make an arrangement with a private adoption agency. I think they're usually like nonprofits or some kind of charitable organization.
Like vetted in some way.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
exactly.
respected and yeah.
So we knew we had this very short window because you have to have 6 months of like approval. They come and they check you out and make sure everything's good and settled in.
Background checked and everything. Yeah.
But even after you get the child, you still have 6 months of them coming to check and do home visits and all this stuff.
Okay, even if you're in Zimbabwe.
That's why we had a short window, because we couldn't be in Zimbabwe until after this 6 months.
Okay, so you got Keenan while you were still in Canada before you left? It's because you had to.
She was born in January.
Okay, and you left.
And we moved to Zimbabwe in September, October.
And were you supposed to go before that, but they let you stay a little longer, or it just worked out that way?
Just worked out.
Okay, and where did Keenan come from?
So she's born in Toronto.
Yeah, okay.
And the mother had kind of just denied her pregnancy.
Oh, okay.
And so she became available at the last minute with no real notice.
Yeah.
And because we had I'm telling you, we hadn't completed our home study and finished all our arrangements a month earlier.
The requirements.
A month earlier.
Yeah.
And normally this still takes years.
Yeah, you're
with
waiting and
the
waiting.
private. Yeah,
Sure.
you wait and wait and wait. But because she was mixed race, she had been turned down by 4 or 5 families. So they offered them to people that were higher on the priority list than us, who had been on the waiting list for longer. And they said
no.
They said no. And then they said, well, listen, let's forget this. We know that Cal and Lori don't care about the race of the child.
Yeah.
Let's just go straight to them.
How does it work? Do you put, like, people can put preferences?
You put, for sure.
Do people want...
Not just race, right? Blue eyes, blonde hair.
Really? It's like...
They want them to look like the mother.
Child? Is that what people want? They want something to look like them?
Listen, not people. Some people.
Yeah, some people.
There are some people that have these very distinct preferences.
They allow them to do that, and I suppose they still do?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know why that seems so weird to
And
me.
they want a child that's under 2 months, and it has to have, all these
Some people might
characteristics.
want an older child. I don't know.
Some might.
I
No,
guess
I think some do.
that's
Yeah,
adopting from a foster agency.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's so strange to me. But you guys, you were like,
We didn't care.
we just want to, like, I guess you want a healthy baby, but either way,
exactly.
like, let's just
Yeah.
have somebody we can take care of.
So this baby was born. Keenan was born in Toronto, and nothing had been done. And so that's why they were in such a rush. So just go straight. Cal and Lori will take this baby. We know it. Let's just go straight to them now that 3 or 4 people had turned down this child. And so we had to rush right to Toronto because she was in the hospital.
Wow.
And the mother had left.
So,
Because
I guess she would probably go into a foster system if not.
I guess she would have done
I don't
something
know how
like
that works, but something like that. So you get to spend some time with her for 6 months in Canada.
Yeah.
And then she's technically then Canadian, which is good.
Yeah.
So everybody's Canadian.
Yeah.
So you move then with her to Zimbabwe. I'll admit I thought she was from Zimbabwe for a while because you have this new baby.
Yeah.
And how old am I at this point? I don't even remember. Either way, I might not have been paying attention.
89.
Yeah, so I'm still a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you have this baby, mixed race, as you said, in Zimbabwe. Yeah, you must have got her there. And then somebody explained it to me later. I didn't get it. But while you're working in Zimbabwe and Zambia, you make the decision to adopt another kid.
Yeah. So
and Liam,
one of my trips up to Zambia, Lori said, "Oh, why don't you just check it out?" Because Zimbabwe, we couldn't adopt it in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Because Zimbabwe had more tense. Not tense. There weren't major racial problems at the time we were there.
Oh, okay.
But there was still this issue between the races. So whites couldn't adopt, really.
Wow,
in
interesting.
Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Very, very difficult. So Lori said, just check it out next time you go up to Zambia.
Yeah.
So I think on the next time I went up there, and I always drove up because it's, 6 hours from Harare to Lusaka. So I would just drive up and...
Sure. I can empathize now because I've been driving for
the
last bunch of days. But that, before this past week, I'd be like, "That's a long."
No, and it was a
drive.
nice drive.
Okay.
You'd always see giraffes and elephants.
Sure,
and
yeah.
wildlife. It was a nice drive.
Okay.
So I think I went into the Department of Social Services there on a Tuesday, and came home with Liam on Friday.
Wow, just like that.
Yeah, and it's like up there. It was when I said, we're just wondering if you can, is it possible?
And they're like, please, here.
And he was like, which kid do you want?
Really?
Like, yeah.
That was how it is.
Because they had a major, of course, at that time, they had a major problem with the AIDS epidemic. And so there were lots of AIDS orphans.
Yeah.
Whose parents had died, and like lots.
And
this was not one kid Liam's case. But
no.
But
his parents obviously...
No, he was just abandoned.
Yeah. They weren't...
Yeah.
They probably maybe couldn't afford to have the baby.
No idea.
Who knows, right?
Right. They have no
clue,
background.
But whatever.
Zero.
Yeah. So a multitude of possible reasons.
No, on Keenan, being in Canada, we have a full background.
Okay, so you actually...
We know all the history of the mother and the father. You don't know the names.
Okay,
but you know their medical history. You know their background.
Which would help you with her in the future.
Exactly.
If something happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
But William, you didn't have
Zero.
any of that.
Zero.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in Harare, you're helping Zambia, and then you get another assignment. You guys are living there, but...
No, so then after that assignment in Zimbabwe ended, we were supposed to come back to Ottawa.
Sure.
And I said, I don't know, that sounds boring. And
Canada's boring.
And again, it was kind of at Lori's insistence.
No giraffes?
Why don't you take an education leave?
Okay.
And get your
nice.
PhD.
Yes. Is that something you
It was kind of in
about?
the back of my mind, but Lori really pushed it, and so we did.
And
So-
what advantage does this have for you?
Oh, it's just, and I would say this to anybody, building human capital and
Yeah.
is really important.
Yeah.
And it's just gives you another leg up on the competition and your career.
People are like, no more
And,
school.
I was still in my 30s.
I don't want to do school anymore, they say.
Yeah.
But it's worth it we got to keep growing and keep learning.
Yeah. So I would have been
Yeah, so you're in your 30s. Yeah.
in my 30s. And so,
So-
Lori
so
said,
much-
let's take a education leave.
Yeah.
And so I ended up applying at various schools, and Vanderbilt in Nashville gave me the best deal
Okay.
with a full scholarship and a teaching assistantship and everything.
And they do that for PhDs. They pay usually. Is that how it goes?
Not everybody, but they do offer a fair number of scholarships.
Because you got to do some work for them while you're there. Is that why?
These schools compete for students
Yeah.
because they want the best students that will then, once you're out, and if you became a high profile person here,
They
there,
can
another way, then
say-
it builds their school's
Okay.
reputation. So they give
Like you're
They-
doing right now. You're talking about them now.
yeah, that's right. So they
We can edit this part out if you would.
Yeah,
rather not.
no, and it's a good school. It's
Okay.
a good school.
See, the system works.
Yeah. So they do give a number of scholarships, and then they do give research and teaching assistantships. So there you do get paid for work.
Yes.
You have
Did
to
you
work.
do that?
Yeah. So I got a teaching assistantship, and then I got a cash bonus, probably just because they knew I was mature and I did quite well on my
So
GREs.
did you make
and
money
stuff.
doing a PhD?
No.
You were able to use that to live.
Lori had to work, and
Okay, so Lori's is she nursing at this point?
she is
She's about to?
semi-nursing.
About
She
to?
does not have her full nursing degree done yet.
She's always wanted to maybe do this.
Yeah,
and
so she
just
got
get into
into
it.
phlebotomy
Okay.
and working with a
Is
kind
that
of
blood?
Yeah,
Okay.
so she could take blood,
My wife's in
give
med school.
intravenous, but not a full-blown nurse.
Yeah. Okay.
And she was working for like an alternative doctor, alternative medicine guy.
Okay.
Who's into these alternative therapies.
So it's just, she's always helping people. You guys are just
And she
helping
and
people
she
left
really
and
liked
right.
it, and that I think really spurred her interest in nursing. So that
Sure.
when we came back to Ottawa, eventually after Nashville, she finished her nursing degree.
in Nashville. Was she? In Zimbabwe, was she able to do anything? Or
She was working under contract on CETA projects.
Okay.
so
like
she did get a
social
bit-
work and
Yeah, she was managing
healthcare of some kind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what they call the Canada Fund, which is this little projects fund where they give
Okay.
money to this school and that school
that's
and this
awesome.
organization
Oh.
and that organization.
That's really
And she
great.
kind of oversaw that.
I didn't know that. But also, you have 2 babies.
And she
both
was,
of you are
Yeah,
taking care of these.
yeah.
Was your time mostly taken up by work, or did you have time to hang out with that whole family?
I had full time. I had plenty of time
Okay, good.
outside
So-
of work.
So you got to, because you're adopting these kids.
No, and
you want to grow up with them.
in Zimbabwe, it's a lot easier to raise children. Right?
Sure, because
Yeah.
you have staff to take care of things,
Exactly.
right? So do you feel like that was a huge benefit for you
Oh,
guys to
Are you kidding?
to
Getting through
start there
those like ages from 0 to 4.
with like a
like
whole
massive.
team, right?
You got a nanny and a cook and a gardener.
Oh my god! And that's just because that's how it is. I mean, I know
No, that's how it is.
it's not.
They come with the
You're
house,
also,
basically.
You're the way that I like to look at it is they're getting jobs because of the
for sure.
organization, and it's not like if you're like I can cook my own food, you go home. Well, now they don't have a job.
No, they're no, exactly.
That's in certain countries that's important. You know, like we don't want to.
No, domestic help in these
Yeah.
countries is
That's good work. It's big work.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, I think we probably treated them better than
Yeah,
a lot of
than
people
others.
would,
Yeah. It's
So-
like because
but it was a huge benefit to us.
what I like about all of this is like you guys are going all these places and you're just spreading the good, right? Like you're doing good.
You
You're not
hope
going there.
That's what you're doing.
Well, but you are, and you're not going out order to kill elephants. You know what I mean?
Oh, no.
Like that's
No.
this is what some other people on a compound might be there for,
Yeah.
and they might be doing, or they're just going there to be rich and whatever.
Yeah.
And you guys, you weren't rich. You weren't.
No, in those
You know,
in that
you weren't
society,
not poor, but
we
you
were
weren't
rich.
Yeah, relatively, yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
In relative terms, Very well
But
off.
because you don't have this mindset that a lot of, wealthy, ignorant people have.
Bad attitude doesn't necessarily come with wealth.
Well,
But I know what you're saying.
Yeah, but it's like some people, they have the wealth and then they don't realize how good they have it.
Sure.
And then
You
they
could say
treat
that.
people poorly.
Oh, I agree.
And they don't have
some of that-
perspective,
some of that goes on.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess like that's.
But it need not be the case.
It's one of the main things here is that I want to convey to everybody listening is if you're in a situation of privilege or if you come into it, there are two ways you can go with it, right? You can go for the good or you can go for the self-serving.
Oh, no, self-interest
stuff.
for sure.
You guys did good, right? And so you get your PhD.
Yeah.
Come back to
Then we
CETA?
came back to CETA. Yeah.
For how much longer?
So I guess we came back in like 97, something like that.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, I guess I stayed back there for 9 years or something because we moved to DC here to Washington in 2006.
2006. So you're doing everything that you were doing in Zimbabwe, but remotely, or sort of.
Yeah. I mean,
You're just not
slightly
staying in
different
the-
role, but
Sure.
still the same general.
Yeah,
work.
and you just got this opportunity to do what you do now for the World Bank.
So I came to the World Bank originally as CETA's representative
I see.
at the World
Okay,
Bank.
so it was connected. Yeah.
Yeah, that was supposed to be 4 years. So 2006 to 2010.
And then
The Harper government came into power.
okay,
They're not very, I mean, I don't want to criticize, whatever, but
sure.
they were not very development friendly. It wasn't
Okay.
a very good atmosphere. Funds at CETA and development assistance was,
So
being
governmental
cut. It was
changes.
a low priority for the government.
Hmm.
And it just was not a very good environment. Not just from what I hear, although I wasn't there
Yeah.
at the time because I was here. There was just kind of a lot of unease within the government of Canada. So then I
Jump
just switched to staff at the
Yeah.
World Bank. So I
Okay.
became like a full-time staff, nothing to do with Canada, nothing to do. And I retired from the Canadian. I left the government of Canada at that
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Like how hard was that to do?
Oh, bye.
You just asked somebody.
Yeah, bye, gone.
Hey, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
Done. Okay, here's a new.
No, you can.
Here's
It's
a new
easy to
badge.
resign. Send your letter.
And then immediately you get hired. You resign.
No.
resign,
I
you-
made sure I had a job.
had that
at
job.
the World Bank before
Yeah.
I put in my resignation letter.
This is an interesting thing because not a lot of people maybe know what it's like to work for a government within another country and then move into just you're already in the country, but now you're not. Like, do you have like how does it work? Do you have diplomat status of some kind when
Here?
you're- No, like when you were CETA in different places.
In
like,
Zimbabwe,
what's
like-
your status?
Oh yeah, no, you're a Canadian diplomat.
You're a Canadian diplomat. So, we're doing pretty good for time. I mean, my longest one is an hour and 37 minutes, and we're only an hour and 26. So this is pretty good.
I'm going to be your most long-winded guest.
No, I like it. And there's nothing else that talks about breeding animals and the economics of that. So that's definitely staying in. But can you explain benefits or how a diplomat versus just somebody else working on a different visa? Like, what are the differences?
Yeah, I mean, as a diplomat, we could import things duty-free.
Okay.
So, and you kind of had to in Zimbabwe
Sure.
because there's not a lot of consumer goods that we would have been used to.
Okay.
Like
just stuff for your own
just-
personal use?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so
yeah.
we were Lori particularly would make semi-frequent trips down to South Africa where things were much more available
Sure.
and bring them back.
Okay, so that's
so you could just
from
do
any
that.
country you can import.
Import duty-free.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So if you were more on the evil side of the diplomat, you you could take advantage of that.
Could take advantage
And
of
would
that.
you say in the world there are diplomats who do this? Is that
Yes,
not that
there
you
are.
know? Not that you know.
I did not. No,
not that
but
you
no,
know
no,
them, but
absolutely.
just this is something that people do take advantage of. Yeah,
For sure.
Okay, interesting.
For sure.
And and when you were then working at the World Bank as part of the Canadian government, you were a diplomat here in the United States? No. So how
Because
does
you
that work?
actually become a bank employee,
Yes. But
though on loan from the Canadian government. You actually officially wear two hats. You wear your Canadian
Okay.
representative
Yeah.
hat, but you're also a bank employee, so you're supposed to be looking out for the best interest of the bank, but representing Canada's perspective on the board of directors at the bank.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so do you have people whispering in your ear from Canada then?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
You have the whole
When things
whole
would come
team,
up
yeah.
at the board,
Sure.
like for decision,
Yeah.
we would call Canada.
Okay.
And we would say, what's your take on this? What should we be doing? And it didn't mean we had to follow exactly what they said.
No.
If it was not in the best interest of the bank, if there was a conflict.
The bank
But
takes
they were
precedent, I
informed.
guess. Yeah.
They said, here's Canada's perspective. And typically, we reflected that.
Okay.
With
so,
rare exceptions.
like, yeah.
No, because the other thing is that because the World Bank is made up of like 183 members or something.
Sure, yeah.
I forget the exact number, but 180
Yeah.
something members. Not every member has a seat on the board of directors.
I guess not.
There's only, at the time, there were only 24 executive directors.
Yeah, and
there's
the
now
ones
25.
with the most percentage, the highest percentage of representation.
So Canada,
yeah.
even every country is represented at the board, but so Canada represented Canada, Ireland, and most of the Caribbean.
Okay.
And so sometimes Canadian interests were not the same as Ireland's or the Caribbean's interests. So sometimes we would say, no, this time we're siding with the Irish. That's a better perspective.
So you're wearing a bunch of hats on
Exactly.
On this.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
But usually there weren't conflict. I mean, normally we actually just gave our best advice and made our best decision, what we thought was in the best interest of the bank and the
and these
countries
decisions in general are about where the money goes.
Exactly.
It's it seems like a lot of responsibility.
No, it's about where the money goes. It was about evaluations. Is the bank doing the right things in education sector? Are they doing the right things in the health sector? Those kind of things.
What's the tone like? Is it like we're all here to help the world? Like, is it hugely positive? Because it sounds so positive.
No. The bank is well-meaning.
Yeah,
and
it's like a lot of benevolent people.
And, and staff, most bank staff want to do the right thing and are very, very dedicated, and they're very, very qualified. Like I could not hardly think of an institution that has. And I can remember when the executive director when I was there he was a deputy minister before he came to the bank.
Okay, yeah.
He was the deputy minister of Environment Canada.
Okay,
so he led Canada's environmental negotiations, and he was the head running COP11. And I can remember at one meeting at the bank, some issue on the environment was coming up, so we invited the bank's experts in. And I remember after the meeting him saying, out of the top 10 environmental experts in the world, 4 were just in this room with us right now. Yeah.
So, and this is altruistic motivations is what brings all these people together.
I think, yeah.
This all comes back to you're not being driven by money.
No,
right?
but I do have to say, the bank is very well paid.
I'm sure.
No, these people
you need the best minds because
yeah.
Not that money attracts everybody.
No, because that quality of person can make that money elsewhere too.
That's right, and you don't want the lack of compensation to be a reason for someone to leave.
So that's why, to get those best people, the bank does have to offer
for sure
substantive salaries.
Let's just close up on as to why you don't have any RSPs.
Oh, on that?
Yeah, because I'm
here's why.
That. So because we have an idea of your path and how you made it to where you are now. We can see that you're getting your PhD. You're probably very well compensated. You already had the 4-plex, which you have now sold. We
sold that when I moved to Washington.
Okay, and so in the meantime,
so we held it for a long time.
They sold that, but I remember living in another house in Glebe visiting
Ottawa.
you in another house in Glebe in Ottawa, where you lived when you went back.
Yeah,
we
had both of those properties.
So you had that and the apartment building, which was, I'm guessing, paid off very quickly. Or is it still going?
We still had a morttage when we sold it, but it had increased in value,
of course.
And we did well.
Like we're talking about
relatively well.
Buying it in the 90s, no 80s.
Bought in the 80s.
80s.
And would have
selling
sold
it in the
2000s? 2007.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So
plus
doing
it
that.
was cash flow positive for most years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you're not even. It's like it's paying for itself and appreciating. Yeah. Like this is great lessons in getting started early, like in going back in time to the 80s and buying something. If we could all do this, that would be great. Or if you live in an area that is up and coming, you know,
No, for sure.
like
Ottawa's a more difficult. I must say, Ottawa's, I think, is a more difficult rental market now
okay, yeah,
because whether you're in Ottawa or Toronto or New York, you can only charge so much for rent.
so if the mortgages
Rents
are,
can maybe be double in Ottawa what it is in
Yeah.
Windsor.
but
But the property values
yeah,
are 5 times as
Yeah.
much in Ottawa than they are in Windsor.
exactly. So that can be
It's much harder to cover and be cash
Interesting.
flow positive in Ottawa or Toronto or Vancouver than it is in most other, or Calgary or these.
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're getting a $800,000 mortgage if you have a 20% down
Exactly.
payment on $1 million
And you
house.
can't really charge more than $3,000 a month or something.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
so and your mortgage payment might be 4. So yeah, no, I did run into that with one of my previous landlords, and he had to keep reducing the rental, and then revealed to us that mortgage plus condo fees was barely covering it,
Absolutely.
if covering it,
Yeah.
and he tried, but he couldn't get anyone to pay that rent. Right?
Exactly.
And just that's you didn't run into this problem though, or
No,
did you?
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So buying it in the 80s,
Yeah, that
the market
Man.
was not as inflated.
Yeah.
It's much more difficult to do now
Yes.
in Ottawa or any of these major cities.
So you had the house in Ottawa plus the Plex that you weren't living in, or renting 4 units, and then so you lived in the house in Ottawa until you moved here. Did you keep that
Yep.
house?
We sold that too.
You sold that.
We
and
rented it for.
So you sold all your
We rented it
properties.
for 4 or 5 years while we were in Ottawa. While we were here in DC.
in DC. Okay.
Oh, more than that. Maybe
and then
5 or 6
then you
years.
sold it.
Then we sold it.
Okay. So you at one point you had no property in Ottawa. Is that right?
Very
did
short
you-
time.
Very short time.
And then Lori
and-
bought the new place.
Because Lori wanted to go back to Ottawa.
No, we knew we were going
You
to
wanted
retire
to go,
back in
You
Ottawa.
wanted to go back
so,
to Ottawa.
yeah, we knew
but
we'd
you're
be
still
there.
working here. It's
Yeah.
very easy for you to. Well, you like to drive, so you're driving
No big deal.
back and forth, and you're able to buy this property here.
And we bought this property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is this where all your RSP money is? Then is that why?
No, so the RSP was actually a conscious decision.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
not this. I ignored it. Although a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
They just
Well, yeah. That's.
ignore their savings,
Yeah.
their retirement needs.
Yeah.
And it's terrible.
No, it is.
It puts
and-
them in a bind.
That's right, and I mean, but property is a very similar concept to forced savings in an
Sure.
RSP account.
Exactly. So this was a conscious decision that when you do an RSP, basically you're giving up present consumption for future consumption.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're not spending this money now.
Yeah.
But I knew that being a government employee, I was going to have a good pension.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think about
Yeah.
this at all. Actually,
And
of course,
so I didn't really need any RSP saving would be
That's-
kind of a bonus.
that's smart. Yeah.
And I knew I had investment income and that no matter what was going to happen, unless it was a total housing crash or something
Yeah.
with these properties, I was fine.
You got that. So you're
And so why would I give up current consumption and constrain my lifestyle now for future consumption when I'm going to be okay in the future anyway?
well, you're already taking care of it. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Not everybody has this private or public pension as you do.
Exactly.
And of course, then there's CBP on top of that.
Yeah, but with the government pension, you don't get CPP.
How does that work? Oh, interesting. Okay,
So my government pension, as
Yeah.
soon as I take CPP, my government pension's basically reduced by the exact same amount.
And when they
But not the case for old age security.
every year, that does take up the government pension must take up your RSP room too, though, right? Is it part
I
of
suppose it
Yeah,
does.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
good. Well, most pensions, but this is a very different.
I've never paid attention to that
Yeah.
RSP room because I don't have RSP.
Well, because it's up to
So-
them to manage the
Yeah.
government.
And I wasn't going to put any extra in there, so I didn't care how much room
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, of course. So you have a pension. Yeah, this is a good thing to note. Like if you have a pension, you don't have to worry so much about the RSP
No.
because it is that is what the RSP
I had.
is
If I
supposed to
didn't have a
replace.
pension, you would have to have your own pension.
Yeah, I mean it's a retirement savings plan, and a
Exactly.
lot of it is meant to replace the traditional pensions and what they were.
And in
it's-
terms of tax implications,
Yeah.
so I would be saving the tax now, on my
Yeah, I mean,
RSP,
yeah,
but I'd be paying it later when I'm going to be at about the same income level anyways.
same goes with your
More or
pension
less.
though. That like you're putting money into the pension plan, or like they're taking some of it out and matching it, and that's taken up before taxes. Like that's
Yeah.
how the pension works. So it does work in the same way.
Yeah.
And I mean if you don't have to do tax,
So there was no real benefit,
no, that
and
makes
there's
sense.
no tax benefit to doing it, really.
Yeah. I guess it's a bit of a unique situation, but it's
No, I agree.
interesting to note that you just completely didn't do it, and you after thinking about it,
No.
and realizing, and there is always a risk of over contribution and then having to take money out and pay taxes that you don't have to pay,
maybe, yeah.
which is what people do end up doing.
You mean when they're forced to start withdrawing?
When they turn into a registered retirement income fund at 71,
Yeah.
and you have to take out a certain percentage.
Exactly.
If it's too high, not a
No.
bad problem to have,
Exactly.
of course, right? I mean, again,
No, except you're taxed on it.
privilege problems,
Yeah.
but also, yeah, the whole point of it is you're supposed to defer the tax, not pay more tax when it comes out. And so people do run that risk. Yeah, no, that's good. Like, I wanted to talk about once you got your money, what you put it in, and it seems like you did a good job with the housing, and it's just much harder,
Right, and
harder today to do that.
I agree. And I tried to play in the stock market a little bit,
Yeah.
and very, very quickly realized you need too much time.
Yeah.
There's guys that get their whole degree and career in this stuff and don't beat the market anyway.
That's right.
So why would I think I'm going to do better than just throwing any excess money in a mutual fund or something?
I wish everybody could make this, have this realization.
No.
Like before they buy a whole bunch of stocks and lose their shirt, because it's true. Like, and also you could even say, yeah, maybe an active mutual fund if you were thinking of that at the time, but then we can go even further. These guys who manage the active mutual funds don't necessarily have any proof that they're doing better than the markets anyway.
No. So the best thing I've always said is just stay diversified across a kind of decent set of mutual funds or whatever.
By the market.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry then.
And buy, like, I don't talk about this enough. I've had other guests to talk about real estate, obviously, but if you can get an investment property that pays for itself, I mean, the risk is super low. Like, it's just that it is a job. Like, you had
you
to
pay
hire
attention
somebody.
to it.
You hired a property manager.
Yeah.
That was part of your costs.
Yeah.
So that's all. If you I guess how much of your year would, like, what percentage of your time do you think that property when you had it took?
With the property manager?
No, like with
almost zero.
Yeah, so that you turn that in, the money became thing. But before you had that, how much time?
Well, when we were living there,
yeah, well,
that's the only time that I didn't have a property manager.
You were right there.
Because we were right there, and there'd be maybe, let's say, a vacancy a year.
Yeah, okay.
Or maybe 2 vacancies
and
in
you'd
a
have
year.
to work to try to fill
And
it.
so I would have to go in there and maybe paint and paint the walls, do this. One time I completely took all the carpet out and put down laminates in all the units. And so that's a bit of work. But I would say it wouldn't have been, on average, 5 hours a month.
And you were lucky with tenants then.
Pretty lucky with
some
tenants.
people have
we had
had
the odd
horror
one
stories.
time we had a horror story, a nutcase, but other than that, it was.
Was there poop involved? Because it usually involves poop of some kind.
There was, but that was in the police car.
Okay, I think that's a really good place to end it.
Yeah,
because
we
could have another half hour just drilling down on whatever that story was. Thanks so much, Cal.
Okay, thanks.
If you like this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or however you get your podcasts. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please go give me a 5-star rating and write a review. If you're already a subscriber, you're the best. I'd love to get your feedback on this episode in my new Facebook group. To find the group, go to Facebook and search for The Personal Finance Show. Once you're approved, you'll be able to interact with me and previous guests of the show and other fans as well. Because right now, I don't know who listens to the podcast. It's not like there's a list of who listens and who doesn't. And, the only way for me to know what's happening out there and who's enjoying the show is through reviews and through this Facebook group if you want to come and talk to me directly or send me an email. As I said at the start of the episode, this is the last episode of 2018 and I'll be taking a few weeks off. But I have some great guests lined up for the next 3 months. First up in January will be Melissa Leong, author of the new book, Happy Go Money. Then I have the founder of Total Control Financial, Damian Lupo, Jackie Lamb from HeyFreelancer.com, and Nico Barraweed, head of international business at Nova Credit. And that's just January. I have guests lined up for next year and the year after that and however many years it'll take me to interview everybody. Everyone has a personal finance story, and I want to help them tell it. Thanks so much for a great 2018, and I'll talk to you again in the new year.